Spain just can't help themselves, which is brilliant because Jules is with us, as is Sid Lowe from Madrid. Sid, you're just the epicentre of the nonsense that just seems to be continuing. We heard Florentino Perez last night and Joan Laporta today doubling down on the fact that the Super League is still going to go ahead. This is like Stevie holding on to the last piece of shepherd's pie. They can't let it go.
The president of La Liga, Javier Tebas, today said, I don't know if this is a B Super League or a Tri Super League, a Bi Super League or a Tri Super League, because of course he wasn't sure whether Juventus were hanging in there as well, or whether it was just Real Madrid and Barcelona who were still there. If it is, I suppose they need to find some other clubs. They could try giving the other 18 Spanish teams a ring.
Well, yes. Why do they keep persisting, Sid? Because it seems, from the outside looking in, that it's beyond ridiculous now.
Well, it's slightly different the way that the two are approaching it. Real Madrid haven't said we're still in. What has been said is Florentino Perez, I think, kind of admitted defeat in that interview with El Larguero the other day. He said that at the very start of it, he was asked whether he should be introduced as the president of Real Madrid and the president of the Super League. And he kind of said, well, president of Real Madrid will do. He talked about his disappointment. He talked about how the English clubs had pulled out and how he felt that at least one of them, which we understand to be Manchester City, weren't always completely convinced. But then he did say, but look, no one's actually signed the official paperwork to say that they're pulling out yet. And that comes with a series of penalisations if you pull out. We believe it's a fairly hefty whack of money. So maybe that's one of the reasons why Madrid and Barcelona haven't, because they don't want to confront that. Although Perez, as I say, says none of the clubs have done this formally. And so he was talking about this in a way of disappointment, in a way of if you like, an acceptance that this was almost over. Laporta was very different in that Laporta was just like, we want to be in this, we think this is the right thing to do, we want to have dialogue, we want to go ahead. It's difficult to judge exactly why with Laporta. Now, he didn't push this project all the way through. He came into it quite late. Bear in mind, he's only been president since the middle of January. And so the situation is different. But I think really and truly, probably what lies behind Laporta's decision is a desperation of the economic state of the club.
Let's touch on that. These two are the most, recognisable brands in the world, along with Manchester United, when it comes to football globally, Sid. So why can't they use that brand to make their own money? Why do they need others involved?
Well, I think in a way, Florentino kind of hinted at this a little bit in that interview. He talked about how when the clubs pulled out, the English clubs could afford to do this. That the English clubs had probably a strong enough league package behind them with a Premier League and a strong enough brand themselves to be able to find a way through and not necessarily to need this Super League. To want it, yes, but not to need it. They need it. Why can't their brands be sufficient? I suppose from their point of view, because you have to play against teams. Their argument is the rest of the Spanish League isn't strong enough. I'm not sure if that's an argument that really stands up. Their argument is that the Champions League doesn't generate sufficient money. I'm not sure that's strong enough. I think if you look at what Madrid and Barcelona have done over the last few years, at the risk of sounding slightly flippant, to be honest with you, Dan, you look at it and think, well, the last thing these two teams need is more money, because they'll just end up burning it anyway.
So let's talk about Florentino Perez and his obsession with 16 to 24-year-olds and the fact that they hate the game and it needs to be made shorter. I'm just wondering where this has come from.
Well, we know that Agnelli's been talking about this, don't we? We know that Agnelli says that he's had studies that suggest this. From what we've seen over the last few days, those studies, at the very least, I think that the findings are slightly questionable. But it is broadly speaking, it is a trend that football clubs are concerned about the way in which people engage with football now, about whether people are really consuming full 90-minute packages or whether they consume, if you like, the content that goes around the game rather than the matches themselves. In a way, that wouldn't enormously matter until the point, of course, at which TV channels said, OK, well, we're not going to pay for the rights for this anymore. They're conscious that a generation of football fans, if indeed they are even football fans, will consume it differently, whether that's through tablets, whether it's through mobile phones, whether it's through online streaming, all of those kind of things. But that's not necessarily problematic. I think that the main thing is just a feeling that they are not properly in control of this and they don't know for sure where this is heading, that some of those certain things have gone. And yet the reality is that these are the kind of questions that get raised all the time and have been raised permanently pretty much for 50 years. Is the young generation going to engage the same way? No. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is falling apart. And also there's a massive contradiction in this. And Florentino made a big point of saying there are what was it? I think he said it was 2 billion football fans in the world, but there aren't enough of them. So I don't know how many he needs. And that's a recurring question as well. How much do you need? It's not like the Champions League money is a little, and as I say, if you got more of it, well, it will just get spent.
Gab made a good point yesterday. He said that okay, you can criticise Florentino Perez, but he's the only one really who has come out as very much the voice piece for this project, whether or not you like it or not. He has put himself out there. Why has he felt it's so necessary to be seen talking about this?
I think that's a very good question, and I think it's a question that needs to be posed at the other members of this group, the other owners of clubs, or the other CEOs, or the other figureheads, because it does ask questions about why wasn't this managed in a different way? Why did you allow basically Florentino Perez and to a slightly lesser extent Andrea Agnelli to be the front for this? And also then there's another question, which is, did it work? Was this the right way of presenting this project? Now, let's make the assumption that we all love the Super League, which I'm not saying we do, but let's make the assumption that we all love the Super League. Let's make the assumption that we're entirely behind this, but that we know that at some point, somewhere in the world, it's going to encounter some opposition. You have to sell that product. You have to present it well. You have to make a point of this product looking strong, looking watertight, that the group of clubs involved are powerful and are all on exactly the same page. Now, first of all, when you say there's going to be 15 founding members, it had better be 15. Because if it's 12, you're already looking weak. You're already looking like there's cracks in this group. The other thing is that when you finally present this, beyond the statements that go on the club's websites, this needs to be presented with a united front. It needs all the clubs involved. It needs to be slick. The marketing needs to be good. The imagery needs to be good. The messaging needs to be good. Instead, what we got was, and apologies for saying this, Florentino Perez on his own, on a late night, tacky show in Spain on a minority channel. That's not the image from which you're going to sell this product, even if the product itself is absolutely brilliant.
What's there been reaction from the Real Madrid and Barcelona fans, Sid?
I find it quite difficult to give you a really clear answer on this because I think it's been mixed. I think we've seen some opposition in Spain. We've certainly seen some opposition, I think in particular from Atletico Madrid fans. We've seen a bit of opposition from some Barcelona fans, and of course some Real Madrid fans are against this. But we absolutely haven't seen the kind of backlash that we saw in England. We absolutely haven't seen the fury, except from other clubs and those left out, except from La Liga and those who feel threatened. From Real Madrid's own fans, we've heard very little of that. There's been little bits here and there. What we've heard more of, actually, I think, is a certain embracing of this. And in particular, if not so much an embracing, if you like, a kind of a defence of Florentino Perez as president, a defence of their position and their willingness to do this. And I think as well, actually a willingness to go ahead with this kind of project. And the idea that, which of course comes with the status that Real Madrid and Barcelona have, but in particular Real Madrid have, that sense, if you like, of their unique position in the Spanish game, that sense that some of these teams in La Liga are just not good enough for them. And I think actually there's been a certain sense of embracing this, of thinking that they wanted to do this. And then there's been a backlash against the backlash, if you like. I realise that we're going kind of all the way down a rabbit hole here, but there's been a backlash against the Super League and then a backlash against that with people who are, in particular Real Madrid fans, saying, oh what, so we want to reinforce UEFA now? Do we? Is that what we want? Or is this really good for the game? And lots of people, I think, defending Florentino from some of the criticism that he's encountered.
So am I right in thinking only Gerard Piqué is who we've heard from?
Well, we've heard from at least one player from every club in La Liga over this round of games, because of course you've had La Liga come out and attack this. La Liga come out and have a go at the three clubs, and Javier Tebas, the president of the Liga, be very bullish about it. What we've seen after every single game that's been played in this midweek round of games is that the touchline interview, because of course the touchline interview is not just done by the TV channel that has the rights, but that TV channel that has the rights has a very close relationship with the league, so in part asks the question that the league wants it to ask. Every player who's done a touchline interview has been asked as the final question what he thinks about this. But of course there's a difference between asking those players and putting them on the spot. And in some cases, they've come out against it. In some cases, and most cases, in fact, I think they've said, well, look, it's not really my place to talk. There's a difference between that and players actually coming out against it. And as you say, the only one I can think of is Gerard Piqué, who did so admittedly after the event, but he'd also done an interview with Jorge Vallano before the event, in which he talked about it very rationally, actually. He talked about some of the elements that he could understand, why clubs would want to do this, why they would want to push towards the Super League. But he also said, look, from a playing point of view, I'm not in favour of this. And I'm not in favour of this because we're ultimately going to end up with clubs like Villarreal, Sevilla. I think he mentioned Everton as well. I think he mentioned Napoli. He didn't just stay in Spain. He said, we're going to end up with those clubs being worth nothing. And I don't want that to be the case.
Last point, Sid. 2024, Florentino Perez said that football would die if there is no Super League. Are Real Madrid and Barcelona in such financial problems that that could be a reality?
No. There isn't a problem, I don't think, of them going out of business, but I think there is a problem or a risk from their point of view of losing their predominant and their preeminent status in European football. And I think that's the thing that we have to remember in all of this. When Florentino Perez in that first interview talked about saving football, I think you can strip it down. Saving football, okay. What you really mean is saving these 12 clubs. Okay, what you really mean is saving yourself. And I think that was the fundamental thrust of this. And I think that's the other point in all this, Dan. That one interview that Florentino Perez did, in which he talked about football being ruined, in which he talked about we have to do something or it's over, in which he said that UEFA are talking about a change in 2024, but we can't wait that long because we'll be out of business by then. We'll be dead by then. Now, of course, what happens is within 24 hours of doing that, all of these clubs have pulled out, the Super League is gone, and that leads to precisely the question you've just asked. Hang on. If the apocalyptic vision of Spanish football's condition at the moment, or football in general's condition at the moment, is true, and this has fallen through, then to be honest, you are absolutely, and of course the word is a bit rude, you're in trouble. You know, you're absolutely ruined. Now, I don't think that's entirely true, but it is true that the lasting impact, if you like, of that interview with Florentino Perez was to reveal in really stark terms something they hadn't revealed before, because of course it wasn't in their interest to do so, and that is that they are really, really worried about the financial situation they are in.
Jules, with us as well. You've been on holiday for the last few days, Jules. That was good timing. Well done. What do you want to talk about? How the reaction's been in France, or your opinion on it all?
I mean, the reaction in France, and I mentioned it a little bit on Sunday night when I was on the show the last time, is because PSG obviously said no, and I think the wave of sympathy towards Nasser El Khelaifi and PSG overall to stand up, and they have different reasons on why they didn't go ahead with this project. Some more valuable than others, so some better than others, but certainly the fact that they said no and they wanted to stay with UEFA and have those kind of values, I think I've given a lot of sympathy for people outside of Paris and who are not supporting the club for them. But the reaction in France has been brutal as well. When you think about a newspaper like L'Équipe, who were at the heart, at the origin of the creation of the European Cup back in 1954, for them to touch to that European Cup, now the Champions League, was blasphemy, really. And I think they went really hard and tough on this project, on the criticism of it, and they have very good sources in a lot of those clubs, but also at UEFA, at FIFA, so they put a good coverage on it, but in a very negative way. So I think the backlash hasn't been as big again as what we saw in England, but certainly the feeling in France was very much this is not how you say football at all.
What do you make of what Laporta and Perez have been saying, Jules?
What struck me first of all with Joan Laporta, and to show you that maybe this whole thing was dead in the water anyway, is because there was never any unity between all those 12 clubs anyway. Joan Laporta on Sunday night went on Partisado de Cope, where he said, the Super League, yeah, okay, but there's other alternatives. For example, I would much rather a big Club World Cup competition every 2 years. For me, that's much better than the Super League. Already he killed the whole project on the night where he was all launched. And for me, the lack of unity that showed not just from Joan Laporta on that example on that instance, but from all of them, and emphasized by the fact that the English clubs left pretty quickly, shows you that that was never going to work anyway. There was no structure, no real plan, no communication strategy anyway. How can you go into something like this so big with no spokesperson, for example, someone who would take the blame, take all the question and answer with proper answers, good answers, not the answers that we saw Florentino said on El Laguero last night, for example, where that was like crazy. Oh, only 40 Chelsea fans turn up, and I know who sent them, by the way. I can tell you who. I mean, like, this was on another planet, and I just think that, you know, maybe the idea they had originally was a good one for them, but the way they put together this project and went along with it and made it public was just a disaster from start to finish.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.